We owe it to the American people to figure out how the United States Capitol, the preeminent symbol of democracy around the world, could be overtaken by an angry, violent mob.
The multitude of events I've worked in my nearly 19-year career in the department, this was by far the worst of the worst. We could have had 10 times the amount of people working with us, and I still believe the battle would have been just as devastating.
Based on the intelligence, we all believed that the plan met the threat and that we were prepared. We now know that we had the wrong plan.
Even our best efforts were not enough to stop this unprecedented assault on the Capitol. However, casting blame solely on United States Capitol Police leadership is not only misplaced, but it also minimizes what truly occurred that day. We had planned for the possibility of violence, the possibility of some people being armed, not the possibility of a coordinated military-style attack involving thousands against the Capitol.
As a result of the ongoing investigation that's being handled by the FBI, as they continue to scrub social media, I think we're learning more and more that this was clearly a coordinated effort. The response was more asking about the plan, what was the plan for the National Guard? The response was more focused on, in addition to the plan, the optics, how this looks with boots on the ground on the Capitol. And in my response to that was simply, I was just stunned.
Senator, from my recollection, I did not receive a request for approval for National Guard until shortly after 2 p.m. when I was in Michael Stanger's office.
Let me get that straightened out. Mr. Sun, do you know when you asked for National Guard assistance? Was it 1:09 or was it 2 p.m.?
It was 1:09, sir.
1:09. And who did you ask for assistance at 1:09?
It was from Mr. Irving. I believe he was in the company of Mr. Stinger at the time as well.
And Mr. Irving, why would you not remember that?
Senator, I have no recollection of a conversation with Chief Sund.
We've received information that prior to January 6th, Capitol police officers were not trained on how to respond to an infiltration of the Capitol building. Is that correct, Mr. Sund?
When you talk about infiltration, you talk about a large insurrection like we saw on the January 6th? No.
So on that day, you issued rules of engagement that included what specifically? I'm an officer. What was I supposed to do if those barricades were breached?
There's rules of engagements that exist. They weren't issued just that day. They existed.
They don't vary from event to event based on threat analysis?
No, sir.
What the FBI sent them on January 5th was in the form of an email. I would certainly think that something as violent as an insurrection of the Capitol would warrant a phone call or something.
Question, Mr. Sun, can you tell us exactly how the Capitol Police preparations for January 6th differed from preparations for the protests from last summer? And if you can specifically address if they were the same or different use of force guidelines in place on January 6th compared to the protests of last summer, or any criteria for making arrests on January 6th versus the protests from last summer.
Okay, and if you could do that in about a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator.
I will do that very concisely.
Okay.
So I want to look at it from planning and preparations. We plan for every demonstration the exact same way. Doesn't matter the message of the person, doesn't matter the demographics of the grievance involved in the demonstration. We do it the exact same way. We develop our information, we develop our intel, and we base a response plan on that.
The statements at the beginning from all the witnesses, they may have disagreed on some details and, okay, but there is clear agreement that this was a planned insurrection. So, and I think most members here very firmly agree with that. And I think it's important for the public to know that. This was planned. We now know this was a planned insurrection. It involved white supremacists. It involved extremist groups. And it certainly could have been so much worse except for the bravery of the officers.